I can't believe I'm doing this. Today, I'm going to be sharing my custom proposals, do an entire walkthrough of what they look like and why I have each section. If you're listening today on the podcast, I'll be as descriptive as possible, but definitely check out the video on YouTube to see exactly how everything's laid out and all the pictures I have and that sort of thing, so you can see how my proposal looks. I'm Jamie Coast, a former Fortune 500 marketing strategist who picked up a paintbrush and built a successful wedding stationery business. So let's get right into it. This proposal is what I send anyone who has a discovery call with me, or to planners if they inquire about my services and needs a custom tailored proposal for custom invitations, save the dates, or anything of that nature. So how I start is I have at the top your proposal from, and then my logo and brand name. And then I also have a couple of header pictures. I switch these out based on the proposal and the discovery call that I had and what the client was looking for. So in this one, we talked a lot about watercolor being a primary focus. And so I have 3 watercolor examples here from previous clients. But if somebody talks more about doing something that's more timeless or moody, or they really want letterpress, I will actually switch these pictures out so that it's reflecting the call that we had, and I'm showing them right off the bat that I have examples in their style of what they're looking for. Then my next section header is Your Love Story Illustrated. As we go through this, you'll see I have a number of different headers that just position my service with the utmost value, and talk about some of those more self-esteem driven, heirloom driven needs, so that we're not really talking about price. We're really focused on, what makes these wedding invitations so valuable and what's going to make them an heirloom. So I love personally Your Love Story Illustrated. It's actually my tagline on my website as well. And because I do a lot of watercolor work, everything I'm doing is pretty much illustrated. So this is my signature differentiator. It's what people know about me, and it's why they come to me. So wedding planners are very familiar with that. I've educated them on that and the relationships that I have. And so they pretty much exclusively bring me clients who have mentioned watercolor at some point in the process, or mentioned custom artwork at some point in the process. So I'm getting a lot of people who are typically familiar with my work or looking for the kind of work that I produce most often. The next section I have is one of my really secret sauce sections that I swear by. This is something I added a year or 2 ago, and just saw a huge difference in the kinds of questions I was getting, the kinds of follow-up I was getting, and even in my closing rate. I've noticed that a lot more people booked after I added this section. And it's essentially my competitive advantages. So I have don't book a stationery designer until you've evaluated. And then I list all the different things that I think clients should evaluate. And then obviously position myself as the best option in the industry for each of these different things. So I have don't book a stationery designer until you evaluated their revision policy, rights to use your illustrations and designs throughout the wedding, their reputation for excellent client service, their team structure and backup systems. So through a lot of these, I'm handling key sales objections and reasons why they might be afraid to hire me, or might have questions about, or even things that they haven't thought about yet, but just building trust with them. So for example, their team structures and backup systems is something where I talk about how I have a dedicated support team, so I'm not going to ghost them in the middle of the project. I have assistants that can step in if there's an emergency situation. And then I also have, a really honed backup system where all their files are encrypted. I'm not going to drop my computer in a lake and lose all of the work that we've done. Everything is on a cloud. And no one's going to be able to hack into it either to get their personal sensitive details. So that one is one I really like adding here, in terms of, how I'm structured as, a real company and giving them a lot of trust. I also have expertise in your style and different print methods. So I talk about how, my expertise is in watercolor, handmade paper, but I can also do flat printing methods, foil printing methods, and letterpress printing methods. And how we have samples of all these different work, and we have pretty much done everything from sculpted embossing to acrylic and leather. And so that we can really handle any project they throw at us. And then the last one is cost of day of design. Because I don't charge additional design fees for day of for my custom invitation clients, I make sure to say that in the proposal. And also what the industry standard is, which is to charge another $500 to $1,000 in design fees. I'm not suggesting that other people necessarily adapt this as a competitive advantage. The reason why I do it is because I charge this fee in my custom invitation proposals, right? So I'm already $500 to $1,000 more expensive in my design fee for my invitation packages. And so that's why I don't need to charge them for day of stationery when they come back. I'm pretty much just building it in already to the upfront fee. And so if they don't come back, for day of stationery, it's not a big deal to me because they've already paid my design fee essentially for day of stationery, whether they use it or not. And then I have another header, again, just reminding them of the value of an invitation beyond the paper, beyond the cost. The header is the only difference between a party and an empty room is an invitation. So again, positioning the invitation as more than just paper, more than just a product, but it's really the only difference between a party and an empty room. Next, I have a mood board, and I really like to keep the mood board focused on things like colors, textures, vibe. I'm not really ever showing here other stationery designers' work or even my own work unless we've gotten into a very specific discussion on the discovery call and they, are really hung up on a particular thing that, I might include in the mood board. But for the most part, I'm really trying to keep this more about design inspiration and more of a vibe check. So for this example in particular, it was, kind of a Taiwanese ceremony combined with, an American ceremony. And so they were kind of blending that East and West. And they wanted a lot of greens, they wanted a lot of reds, but they didn't want it to look Christmassy necessarily. And so I was able to capture that vibe within the mood board. And I don't do a mood board for every single proposal. Sometimes we don't really get into enough specifics that I feel confident in delivering a mood board. You really want to make sure that if you're delivering a mood board for a client, that you feel like you're nailing their vibe. It's not horrible if there are things that need to change. Sometimes it becomes a conversation starter and a reason for them to get back to you if there's something in the mood board that they don't like a color, or they feel like, oh, it's too much green, it really needs to be more red and white, or whatever their thing is. So sometimes it's a good thing if it's not 100% nailing it. But what you really don't want to do is put a mood board in front of somebody that's way, way off from what they were envisioning and the vibe that they were thinking for their wedding, because it just instantly kind of kills it and makes them feel like you're not really a good fit. Which is fine in the sense that, like, if you're not nailing it based on your initial conversations with them, you're probably not going to nail it later on. There's just some sort of communication issue there. And so it's fine for them to kind of part ways with you at that point because you're saving yourself a lot of headache. But again, I really only do this if I feel like I'm nailing it. If we haven't gotten into enough discussion for me to nail a mood board, then I'm not including it. Or if I just don't have time, to be totally honest. Because I find that that's one of the more time-consuming parts of the proposal is putting together these images. And so sometimes I'll just skip it because I just want to get the proposal out there and I don't really have a ton of time. Then I have my proposed invitation packages. So in this case, I have 3 different packages. I have a custom flat printed option, which I often do if they're talking about letterpress or some of these other advanced print techniques. I will often then have my first package be flat printed just so they have a comparison point. So they know, oh, it's the letterpress that's driving up this cost, or, oh, it's the foil that I requested that's driving up this cost. If I drop those things, then we get to maybe a more reasonable number for their budget. If we're not talking about letterpress or foil or any of those sorts of things, then I will make this a semi-custom option sometimes. I'm trying to get away from that just because if I'm putting a proposal together, I really want it to be mostly custom work that's getting sold. I don't want to have to do that for semi-custom. I want people to just buy semi-custom without a phone call. But again, like I have a lot of planner relationships that I've been doing year over year. And so there are instances where I will put this as semi-custom. And that's what I did in the past, was I kind of made the first option semi-custom if we were mostly talking about custom. You kind of want the first option to be something that's the basic option that you offer, but not the thing they're going to choose. If you find that your customers are always choosing the first option that you give them, the lowest price option, then what you want to do is, readjust your sales process, because really you shouldn't be getting everyone wanting like the bare minimum. You should be getting a lot of people in that sort of second and third tier package. And then on the reverse of that, if everyone is choosing your third package, you're underpriced for the clients that you're getting and for the inquiries that you're getting. And so you want to look at that as well too. You don't want everyone choosing the third package and thinking that that's a deal. The third package should be the one with all the bells and whistles. This applies to more than just stationery. If you have photography packages, if you have floral packages, right, you want to use this section to really just hone in on the proposal and all of the different details that are included in each. And if you're someone who is really productized their services and you don't have to even really customize this section that much, that is ideal. But I know that most of us in the wedding industry are, providing pretty high level custom services, and you'll need to take your time to do the budgeting and making sure all the details are correct here. In this case, they also wanted some rush delivery and wanted to know what that looked like. So I included, the cost there to rush these items. I also included hand calligraphy, addressing to any package and what that would cost. I really like doing this for things that I think are somewhat optional, because it reduces the sticker shock of the package price. And if they really, really want it, they know exactly how much it costs to add it on, but I don't have to inflate all of my prices right off the bat by $640 for hand calligraphy or, $1,500 to do rush delivery red. I'm like calling that line item out separately from a sales psychology standpoint in order to make these packages just seem a little bit more attractive. And then this section is also really important. I have questions immediately afterwards, and there's buttons where they can click to book a follow-up or send an email to me. And I have specific instructions. If you're ready to book, send me an email for your contract and deposit details, right? So if they were ready to buy at this point, they've looked at the packages, they're like, ooh, I want that second package. They can immediately click and send me an email and we can get started, right? There's no confusion about how to get back to me. There's no, I need to dig your email address out of my inbox. It's all cluttered with stuff. I don't remember if this is for this stationer designer that I was talking to or that one, or this planner or that one. It's very, very easy for them to just buy. The next section I have is for accessory add-ons. And so this is my upselling section. So after I've shared the packages, then I have the opportunity to upsell them on different add-ons that maybe we didn't even talk about in the inquiry call. So I have just my most common ones: ribbon, wax seals, vintage postage, hand calligraphy, vellum wraps, and tracked and insured paper box mailing. So things that, again, like maybe they didn't even think of in the inquiry call to ask me about, but I'm giving it to them right here. So it's I don't have to go back and forth 100 times on, oh, can you tell me what the cost to add wax seals would be for package 2? Oh, can you tell me what the cost would be to add vellum wraps actually to package 3? Because we're thinking about vellum wraps now that we've seen them. It's already right here. They can kind of do that math themselves of, oh, I love wax seals, and so that's going to be $160 if I wanted to add 100 wax seals. Then they can just tell me right away. Great upselling opportunity. I have a whole episode on upselling and why it's really important and how it can double or even triple your client values. So I'll try to link to that at the end of this episode. And then another important section I have is a sample timeline. So a lot of this stuff is feeding into what it looks like to work with me. So if we scroll back up, for each of the packages, I actually have like a little line art drawing. And I don't customize these a ton. I have different variations of them. And so I just pull the one that's most appropriate. But it helps visually differentiate the packages to have, just different line art drawings of what's included in each package. But it also gives you a sense of like what a concept phase might sort of look like. I'm not really getting that detailed in them where it is a true concept phase, but I am sort of just giving them, different opportunities of what it looks like to work with me, right? Where I'm being super clear and I'm giving them a little drawing as part of it. And then the sample timeline feeds into that as well. So I have, different timelines. I'll have 1 or 2 of these typically. This one I actually have 3 timelines because I have a custom flat printed timeline and what that looks like. I have a letterpress timeline and what that looks like. And then I have a rushed letterpress timeline and what that looks like. And so I'm being very clear about when things would get done. And again, I'm giving them a sample of what it would be like to work with me. I'm outlining all of the different phases from the project kickoff to the concepts and sketches, paintings, the proofs, the revisions, the production and shipping, and the assembly and mailing. If I don't know when they want to get started or when they want to mail their invitations, I'll typically just do week 1, week 2, week 3. But if I know the date that they're aiming to hit, or if I know they want to get started right away, then I can include actual dates here. And then I have another header, cookie cutter or conversation starter. The choice is yours, kind of reinforcing that message of value. And I say there's no template for your love story. And then I have a whole section of why you should choose a professional designer over a ready-made design company like Vinted or Zazzle or one of those companies, reinforcing the value of working with a person. And again, just showcasing the value of working with a stationer and why you would want to do it. So this is another opportunity to overcome some sales objections, especially after they've seen the pricing and they're looking for more information. Because this is an endless scroll page, it kind of encourages them to keep going. And so this just reinforces why they're paying those higher prices, why they might be paying $8,000 for a custom invitation package, for example. So I have, for something so personal, you want to make sure it's done right. Here's why you should choose professional over a ready-made design company. And then I go into, you have an extra set of eyes on all of your proofs. I don't guarantee any perfect, no mistakes, but I can guarantee that having an extra person looking over your invitations really results in fewer mistakes than if you did it by yourself. A real person you can call, right? Everybody hates robots these days. Every time you call someone, a robot answers. And it's super annoying because they just don't understand what you're actually asking for. But in this case, I'm an additional person on the wedding team. They can shoot me an email. They can call me. They have that added body kind of to their team that's really special. And they can tap into that throughout their entire wedding. And then the last one is you don't know what you don't know. So I just talk about how I'm a seasoned professional. I've been in the wedding stationery business for a long time, and I can give you advice on everything from how to word your invites to how to address an envelope. So I get into sort of like the nitty gritty of, things they might not have thought of in terms of etiquette. The next section I have is my social proof section. So I have an as seen in section, and then I have a scrolling logos here. So all of the different press opportunities that I've gotten, I have a bunch of them in just kind of an endless scroll, so they can see like, wow, she's been in Huffington Post, she's been in Bride, she's been in CBS, she's been in Loverly, right? I have like just so many of them that it really emphasizes that I'm a sought after designer, and my work is worth a lot of those high prices because I have a lot of social credibility. The next section I have is recent client work. So I have another gallery here with scrolling images of a lot of the more recent work that I've done. Honestly, I don't switch out this section at all. And if you're thinking that we're going through a ton of sections and this is a lot of work, most of these sections don't update at all, right? I'll update them maybe once a year. In this section, the only thing I would potentially update is I would reorder the images. So again, if somebody has told me that they really want classic, minimalist, timeless, stationery, then I try and make at least, the first couple of photos that they're seeing that kind of work as opposed to the watercolor work, and vice versa. If they tell me they love watercolor, they want it to be really colorful, then I'll make sure that the first, 10 images or so are all of my like watercolor stuff so that they're seeing that first. And it just auto scrolls, so they can just sit here and it actually goes through it for them, or they can, choose different pages and, scroll to them themselves. Then I have some recent testimonials. I call them recent client love. So I do have some testimonials from real brides. Again, I don't update this more than once a year or so. And it just gives them a sense of like, yes, I'm a trustworthy person. Reviews help close and make the sale. And then lastly, I do have a little header footer section that says follow Cotton and Bow Paper on Instagram. For me, this section just gives them some place to go to learn more about me once they've gotten to the end. But I'm not 100% sure on whether I recommend this section for everybody, because I actually don't want them to leave this page necessarily. I really actually just want them to contact me to book. But it does just give them another place where they can look and see I'm a real designer. I have a lot of followers, more examples of my work. So it just lets them dive deeper into it. The other thing I would recommend that I don't actually have in this proposal is at the bottom, once they get to it, some sort of maybe like return to the packages button that auto scrolls you back up to the packages, or another call to action to, if you want to book, send me an email or book a follow-up call. I think, either of those at the bottom, again, would really reinforce this message and allow them to contact me directly in a very convenient way. So I hope that you liked getting this sneak peek behind the curtain of my proposal process. This is definitely not the entire proposal process. This is just one piece of it. I think, my entire sales process works together from when they first reach out to me to when we schedule the call and the script that I use in the call. And then, the email that I'm sending them afterwards with the proposal. One thing I'll do for VIP clients sometimes is actually record a Loom video just like this one, where I walk them through the proposal and try and preemptively answer any questions that they might have and, walk them through the different packages and why I chose those packages. That's a really nice touch for any of your sort of high value VIP kinds of clients. And planners love it because nobody does it. It's such a unique thing and it's such a high touch personal thing. I very rarely do that. I do not do that for every proposal. But if I'm working with a brand new planner who has a really high end client, or I'm working with, VIP sort of celebrity level clients, I will definitely add that extra personal touch because it matters a lot to them. I also hope that if you're not a stationery designer, you still got a lot of value out of this. There's so many sections that you can borrow and mimic for floral design or photography or wedding planning, right? You can mirror these sections pretty exactly. And just instead of talking about stationery, talk about wedding planning. Talk about what you need to consider when you're looking at multiple wedding planners. Talk about, why you would hire a wedding planner in the first place. And a lot of the stuff is stuff that you should hopefully have gone through on a call with them. But again, it not only reinforces what you've told them so that they remember it, it also allows them to involve any other key stakeholders that were not on the call and remind them and educate them of all that information. So this one in particular, I love how detailed this proposal is because if their mom and dad are paying for their stationery but they weren't able to join the call, right? I'm alleviating all of their fears and showing them a really professional proposal that goes through any sales objections that they might bring up that I'm not present for. Same thing if they have a planner and the planner didn't join the call, or if their fiance didn't join the call. This kind of goes through like, hey, this is something we really need to do and here's why. And I'm answering all of those sales objections in a very orderly way.